you for filming for Strong, the producer. This is the producer here, right here. Videographer, producer, editor, stuff. What are you doing? That's actually going good. What's up, everybody? Thank you, firstly, for all the new subscribers that have jumped onto the YouTube channel, all the new views. I've received a lot of positive comments, messages, tags on Instagram, a whole bunch of stuff just regarding some of the content that I've been putting out. It's been really enjoyable. Glad you guys have been able to take something out of it. If you haven't already, if you're new, subscribe right now. Make sure you share this video and go through some of the videos that I've been posting in the last few weeks because I've been putting in a little bit of effort, so I hope you appreciate it. Today we are on the way to Join, Perform, Succeed JPS Health and Fitness, which is a personal training studio here in Melbourne. They've just opened up their second studio, which is more towards the city, more towards the CBD. And we're going to meet up with the director, Schepis, who owns obviously the business. And he's going to go through some information regarding technique. He's an accomplished lifter himself. Has been bodybuilding for a number of years and has been taking on powerlifting for the last year or so. Came second at the Open Nationals in only his first year of powerlifting. So very smart guy, knows what he's talking about, and he's going to share some information with us regarding nutrition, counting calories, macros, eating to perform, and eating to change body composition as well. So I'm not entirely sure what he has in plan for us, but I'm really looking forward to learning a few things from him, and I hope you guys can take something out of it. See you in the gym. Hello, my friend. Peace.
Hello. How are we?
Sweet. How ready to go?
I'm ready to go, bro. You just tell me.
Good.
G'day guys, today we're going to learn about nutrition for strength athletes and powerlifters. And nutrition is probably one thing that's often overlooked in the powerlifting community. We always know that we need to eat plenty of donuts, burgers, like Mr. JP here, and then obviously have a massive refeed of as much food we can fit into our stomach after weigh-ins prior to lifting. But what we don't often realize is that we can manipulate our body composition intelligently over time to get favorable outcomes in terms of both our muscle gain as well as going up and down weight classes. We can do that by understanding the science behind nutrition. And what we're going to talk about is energy balance. So really quickly, at a fundamental level, the amount of food you eat that comes into your body will determine whether or not your weight goes up and down based on this being greater than your body's energy expenditure per day. So, if you consume more calories than your body burns, you will gain weight. If you consume less calories per day than your body burns, you will lose weight. That's all I'm going to say on energy balance.
So that's just the classic calories in, calories out.
Calories in, calories out. There are a number of things that affect this, but at a fundamental level, if you eat more food than you burn, you gain weight, and so forth. So calories are obviously a unit of measure required to take 1 gram of water to 1 degree Celsius. And it comes in the food that we consume and drink. That's pretty self-explanatory. But what a lot of people don't know is that our calories are made up of 3 different types of macronutrients, each macronutrient having a unique metabolic property in the body. So protein obviously is responsible for repair and tissue growth. Carbohydrates are our primary fuel source and especially important for strength athletes with anaerobic activities and high intensity sports, such as lifting 1 rep max. And fat, which is obviously important for joint health, endocrine function, and all the rest of it. We also have alcohol and fiber, and we're not going to get too much into those, but just understand that they also contain calories. Now, meal timing and frequencies. This is something that's extremely important for powerlifters, and it's something that we often neglect, or some people place way too much emphasis on. And we have a very dichotomous way of thinking when it comes to fitness and nutrition. So people either take the approach that it doesn't matter at all, and who cares when we eat our food, or people are really pedantic with when and what they eat at what times. Now, the current body of literature suggests that eating protein either before or after your workout is beneficial for muscle protein synthesis, recovery, repair, and tissue growth. And it doesn't really matter too much whether you eat it before or after, so long as you have something within 3 hours. And similarly, the time that you eat your other meals is going to come down to preference, so long as you're fitting your calories within your total targets for the day, That's your primary goal. Now, on that, we're going to talk about how you can set up your diet over a longer period of time to make sure that you're gaining weight if your goal is to increase a weight class, or losing weight if you're trying to cut down a weight class.
So when you say like longer time frame, you're talking...
So this will be over a 12 to 16 week period,
okay.
Potentially longer. So obviously if you're trying to cut weight and you're a few kilos over what you need to be to make a specific weight class, you can look to JP's video, and he's got a fantastic scientific approach to cutting water weight and obviously refeeding.
And of course that's a short term.
But that's a short-term approach. So for example, I had a girl who we used a weight cutting method such as JP's. We dropped her water, got her in the sauna and got her to make weight. And for her, and this is obviously highly individualized, but for her, her lifting turned to absolute rubbish. She went 4 from 9 and it just wasn't something that was beneficial for her. In her subsequent meet, we did a longer cut over 12 weeks. We cut down her body weight. Then for the final 4 to 6 weeks of her prep, we maintained her body weight and she actually went 9 from 9 and hit a number of PBs. So this is something that you can use with a much more long-term focus, and is especially beneficial for females and individuals who may not respond well to the stress of cutting weight and having to make weight. So obviously we need to have a certain amount of calories. So we need to know how many calories we have to eat per day to gain or lose weight as a function of energy balance. Now, for females, we can work this out by multiplying your body weight by an energy factor of either 29, 31, or 33. Now, if you're a smaller female, that's body weight in kilos, and if you're a smaller female, you will multiply your body weight by a multiplier of 29. Similarly, if you have really low activity and energy expenditure throughout the day, you're somebody who's sedentary, maybe trains 3 times a week, not burning a lot of calories, you would multiply your body weight by 29, okay? Obviously, if you're somebody who's a little bit bigger, a little bit more active, you will multiply your body weight, by 29, and smaller females, 27. And if you're a larger female who trains really hard, spending multiple hours in the gym, possibly doing cardio, you can multiply your body weight by 31. So 27, 29, and 31 are the 3 multipliers for you ladies out there to work out your maintenance calories. So those will be the calories that you need to eat to maintain your current body weight, not gain weight and not lose weight. Now, for males, the multipliers that we can use, similar to females, are 29, 31, and 33. So again, smaller guys, inactive, 29, guys who are training 3-4 times a week, moderate size, 74 to 83 kilos, probably go with a 31 multiplier. And those bigger bodies, over the 120s, training 5-6 times a week, you can multiply by 33. Again, this is going to be highly individualized and is only a guesstimate of your maintenance calories, okay? Because the only true way to determine your maintenance calories is to track them in your phone and assess your body weight over a week. The multipliers are simply just a starting point to assess whether or not we're on the money or you're gaining or losing weight. Now, to set up a cut or a gaining phase, we need to understand that we either need to reduce a percentage of our maintenance calories or increase the amount of calories we consume based on our maintenance calories. So let's start with a cutting phase because everybody's interested in losing weight and getting leaner over time. So to set up a cut without impacting your strength gains too significantly, you would obviously create a smaller calorie deficit by multiplying your maintenance calories by a percentage, either 0.9 or 0.8 of your maintenance calories. For example, if you're somebody that is eating 2,000 calories to maintain your body weight and you're creating a 10% calorie deficit, you would simply eat 1,800 calories, okay? So that is how we would set up a cut. The percentages that you can typically reduce your calories by are 10%, again for a smaller cut, which will have less of an impact on your recovery and performance in the gym. 20%, which is a moderate calorie deficit, which will have a obviously more significant impact on recovery. And then 30 to 40%, which will have greater fat loss and weight loss in a shorter period of time, but could potentially impact your recovery and strength, which obviously can be counterintuitive to the purpose of a longer cutting phase. Conversely, if you're trying to gain muscle and you're trying to build some size or increase a weight class, we need to eat at a calorie surplus. Therefore, we need to add a percentage of calories to your maintenance calories. So this can be done by multiplying your maintenance calories by 1.1, which is a 10% increase, 1.2, which is a 20% increase, or 1.3, which is a 30% increase. Now, the trade-off here is that there is only so much muscle tissue that we can synthesize per week, per month, and this is scaled on your training age. So if you're somebody who's a beginner, just starting to lift, it's probably going to be beneficial for you to eat a hell of a lot of food and eat more than 30% above maintenance calories, because the likelihood of you synthesizing muscle tissue as opposed to fat is much higher than somebody like JP who has been training for 8, 9, 10 years, who has almost reached their genetic potential in terms of muscle growth and simply won't respond the same way as a beginner athlete. Therefore, for more advanced athletes, a slower rate of weight gain is far more beneficial for gaining weight and increasing a weight class than a really rapid weight cut. Now, obviously, JP's done a multitude of videos on the benefits of having fat and in terms of lifting and the benefits this can have for our mechanics in our squat, bench, and deadlift. But for the sake of today's conversation, less fat gain is obviously going to be the goal long term. You know, if we want to increase our weight, we can do other things to jack up our calories and put on some mass. Now, here's the tricky part, which is really individual dependent. We know that protein is the most important macronutrient for the lifting community because it's extremely beneficial for muscle protein synthesis and tissue repair. However, one mistake that powerlifters and bodybuilders and the lifting community do make is overconsume protein. And eating more protein than your body can potentially synthesize in a 24 or 48-hour period simply becomes expensive carbohydrates. You urinate that excess protein through a process called gluconeogenesis, which is a conversion of protein into glucose. So, protein intake. If you're in a gaining phase, you need a lot less protein than what you possibly think. Only around 1.6 to 1.8 grams per kilogram of your body weight is necessary if you're eating at a surplus of calories, because you're not at risk of losing muscle if you're consuming excess food. Conversely, if you're cutting weight, there's a greater chance that you could potentially lose some muscle mass. Therefore, we want to increase our protein intake. Anywhere from 2.2 to 2.8 grams per kilo of body weight is a great place to start and can really ensure that you're recovering properly and sparing your muscle tissue while in a deficit. Now, fat intake and carbohydrate intake is completely up to your preference. We need to remember that carbohydrates are the primary fuel source for the body, especially for powerlifting, which is a high intensity anaerobic sport. Now, bodybuilders, powerlifters, and especially females typically have a tendency to reduce carbohydrates and eliminate carbohydrates from their diet when they're trying to lose weight or cut a weight class. This is extremely detrimental to your performance for the reasons that I just mentioned. Therefore, it's always important to consume adequate amounts of carbohydrates and fat, because this not only improves your performance, but it makes your diet more enjoyable and more sustainable, which is what we need when we're cutting over a longer period of time. Eliminating macronutrients is not the way to go. Now, the most important and critical element to all this is assessing and then adjusting your calories and your macronutrients based on your response to the diet. It's very easy to throw arbitrary numbers such as 1.6 grams of protein per kilo, but if you can't follow the diet and it's not working for you, then you're not going to get results over that longer period of time. Therefore, we need to assess how we're responding to that diet, and the way that we do that is twofold. You can take progress pictures, which are really cheap, quick, and inexpensive way to do that. I said cheap and inexpensive twice. And weighing yourself on the scale. So obviously the scale can fluctuate for a multitude of reasons, as we all know, sodium, water, if we haven't gone to the toilet and all the rest of it. But if we do this by taking out as many variables as we can and align that with the progress picture, we can see over time if we're having favorable body composition improvements in terms of muscle and fat. So, before you change your diet, remember that you must follow the diet. If you're not following your diet 110%, then any changes that you're making are going to be inaccurate and a guess at best. Therefore, we need to follow the diet 100% for at least 10 days, assess scales and progress picture, and then make adjustments. Now, if you haven't gained weight, it's simple. you increase your calories. If you haven't lost weight, it's simple, you reduce your calories. If you did gain weight, then you can obviously leave your calories and macros and just keep plugging along until your weight plateaus, and then you make a change. Similar with your fat loss, you keep plugging away until you plateau, and then you make an adjustment. If the rate of weight gain or weight loss isn't as quick as you'd expected or what you would like, you can simply make adjustments accordingly. But the key is to assess and amend. Now, final word on being compliant and following your diet 110%. If you're aiming for perfection, it's quite possible that you'll be deterred to follow your diet, because there is no such thing as perfection when it comes to nutrition. So what I recommend is aiming for a range of your calories, protein, carbs, and fat. Aim for a range of within 100 calories for your calories, obviously, and a range of at least 20 grams either side for your protein and carbohydrates, and then a range of 10 grams either side for your fat. That's the simple recommendation I give for people when talking about compliance. And if you do that, remember that you'll be more accurate with your assessment and you'll be able to make adjustments accordingly.
So what do you suggest, or what have you noticed in your clients, or clients that you've worked with in the past, when they don't follow this more conservative guide in terms of cutting and gaining percentage changes in the calorie intake, and say someone cuts their calories by 50%, like immediately, within a week, they just drop 50%, what ends up happening to them in the short term, what ends up happening long term? Okay, so typically if people reduce calories really quickly, we need to remember that a whole host of metabolic adaptations occur in response to energy restriction. Therefore, when we reduce calories significantly, the body slows down a number of processes. This is homeostasis and the body trying to maintain its body weight settling point. So what will typically happen is energy levels drop significantly, which impacts their training. Hunger signaling increases through what is known as ghrelin. So ghrelin's a hormone which works on an axis of leptin. So when these hormones and your daily energy intake is affected in such a drastic way, the body fights back very drastically to ensure that you don't starve, essentially. So in the short term, this typically results in overconsumption when the person can no longer follow that 50% reduction. And there are typically two factors which are responsible for people's inability to follow a diet, and that's decreased inhibition as well as rigidity. So, when we have 50% of our calories taken out, it's quite a rigid diet and, unsustainable. Therefore, people cannot follow it and will splurge. What ends up happening long term, like say they cut 50% and they keep on that calorie intake for 4 weeks, 8 weeks, what ends up happening to their metabolism? What ends up happening to their endocrinology? What have you seen?
In terms of long-term metabolic adaptation, what I've seen is their body will adapt to those calories. So there's down-regulation in all those hormones that we spoke about, but there's also an adaptation which we can't account for the lower body weight. So as they lose weight, their daily maintenance calories will go down, but it'll go down lower than what we expect. Therefore, they won't be able to eat anywhere near as much as what we would otherwise predict based on their body weight.
That's a typical metabolic damage that you might have heard about.
It's not actually metabolic damage, it's just response to diet. It's called metabolic adaptation. But the consequence of this is natural. It's a normal response to diet. It's not a bad thing. It just means you're losing weight and getting leaner. But the quicker these things happen, the more severe they are typically. And then in terms of reversing out of it, it just takes a longer period of time to get calories back to a point where your diet's enjoyable again. And the consequence of that is that people will gain fat rapidly because they can't consume that amount of food for so long.
So what happens, say for example, someone's been cutting or gaining consistently, they've been seeing good results, but then they plateau and they need to adjust. You said before that you need to assess and adjust. How do you know how to adjust?
First and foremost, these are just guides. Everything that you do is going to be based on your individual response, and that's the most important thing to understand. And potentially hiring a nutritionist, dietitian, or somebody to do this for you is always going to be a far better option, because you're going to get an objective perspective on your response to the diet and your results, obviously. But when you plateau, in terms of making adjustments, the smaller the increment, the better, because then you can really assess how much the magnitude of change as a result of any increase or decrease in your calories. If you make large sweeping changes, typically there'll be such a response it's really hard to quantify, and that's how I would approach making adjustments, is small and incremental. So guys, that is nutrition for powerlifters. That's an intelligent and scientific way to set up your diet to make long-term progress in terms of your muscle and strength progress, and to go up and down weight classes. I hope you guys all learned something, enjoyed the video, and hit us up with comments, and we'll get back to you soon.
Thanks a lot, man. That was really good. Yeah. Where can the good people find you on the internet?
On the internet, go to JPS Health and Fitness.
On Facebook?
On Facebook, Instagram, and obviously Jacob Schepis on the old IG.
On the IG. And the website is?
www.jpshealthandfitness.com.au.
Cool. We're in Port Melbourne and Airport West. If you happen to be in Melbourne, come and do a training session.
Come down and check us out, guys.
Cool. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
That was really good.